got a real special treat for you here. Joining us now to discuss all the events of the week is Tomi Lahren, host of OutKick's Tomi Lahren is Fearless and a Fox News commentator. Tomi, another week, another apparent assassination attempt on Donald Trump. Now, the shooter, the alleged potential shooter, had this huge social media history, all this progressive hard left stuff. And yet, apparently, it's the media that's blaming Trump for his rhetoric. Apparently, it's Trump's rhetoric that's to blame here. Walk us through it.
Well, it makes no sense, as we both know, because we're logical and decent human beings. But I'd also like to point out that Donald Trump is dodging bullets and Kamala Harris is dodging interviews and questions. So there's a big contrast there between the two candidates that we have to choose from in November. But the way that the media, who has spent years demonizing and degrading Donald Trump, making him appear as if he's almost subhuman, they obviously play a role in this. Now, I'm not one that likes to point at political speech and say that that's the only reason that crazies commit heinous and crazy attacks, because ultimately it lies with that person, and anybody can be radicalized if they're not of stable mind. However, even after the second assassination attempt on Donald Trump, almost immediately after, you have MSNBC putting Hillary Clinton on the air, talking about once again how Donald Trump is dangerous and a threat to democracy. These people are shameless, they do not care, and they have absolutely zero regret for what they've caused and what they've done. They will win at all costs, and I think that's become abundantly clear.
Well, Tomi, you know, it's not just MSNBC here. Look at this CNN freakout when somebody suggested on this panel show that somehow, you know, the Democrats maybe ought to stop calling Trump this existential threat to democracy. Have a look at this.
He'll be a dictator.
Those were his words.
There'll be a bloodbath. There'll be a bloodbath.
That there would be a bloodbath.
He wants to terminate the U.S. Constitution.
She didn't say that there would be.
The first thing she said, which was true, and the second thing she would have said.
It is said by every Democrat working for or around her campaign every day on this network and every other one.
Tomi, it's like they put all this stuff out there every single day, and then when they get called on it, well, how's that for hypocrisy? They lose their minds.
Well, of course, because they don't like to look within and look at the problem that they've created. But then they often like to talk about rhetoric, and they often like to talk about the things that Donald Trump says that inflames them and ruffles their feathers. But let's be honest, they would much rather talk about Donald Trump being a threat to democracy. In fact, they would much rather talk about a second assassination attempt on Donald Trump than have to talk about the issues that the American people care about. They would much rather focus on scandal and controversy than talk about Kamala Harris and her policies or her lack thereof. That's why you see all these panel shows talking about it, because they would much rather spend their time, even if they're in some ways complicit in it, talking about that rather than the issues, because they cannot win on the issues.
Hey, speaking of Kamala Harris, I'm glad you brought this up in her rhetoric, because she participated in an official interview. I know, right? Sitting down with the National Association of Black Journalists. And have a look at this. She stuck to the same old word salad.
Why is joy important to you to insert into this election? And what do you make of Republicans using that as a way to suggest that you're not a serious candidate?
Well, sometimes I think, and I'll say to whoever the young people are who are watching this, there's sometimes when your adversaries will try and turn your strength into a weakness. Don't you let them. Don't you let them. I find joy in the American people. I find joy and optimism.
Tomi, how's that for a hard-hitting question? Are you feeling the joy here?
I'm certainly not feeling the joy. The American people are not feeling the joy anytime they go to the gas pump or to the grocery store, or they attempt to buy a house or pay any of their bills. There's no joy there. But Kamala Harris, the way that she speaks like she's a motivational poster or a fortune cookie. She says a lot of words without saying really anything at all. And she thinks she can skate by with this, but the American people are catching on that she is perhaps an empty vessel. She's also one of the most inauthentic and disingenuous politicians the American people have ever seen.